Have you ever noticed that the bill at the end of a first date is never just a bill? It is a silent test of confidence, power, expectations, and self-respect. And the person who understands this invisible game often controls the direction of the relationship without saying a single word. Most people think the question is simple, who should pay? But Machiavelli would laugh at such a shallow question, because the real question is, who understands the value of perception in every human interaction? People judge each other long before they speak honestly. They observe confidence before kindness. They notice certainty before generosity. They remember actions more than promises. A first date is no different. The money itself is rarely the issue. The meaning behind the money is what shapes attraction, respect, and future expectations. If you fail to understand this, you may believe you are being generous while unknowingly giving away your position. If you understand it, you will never let a simple payment decide your value again. Imagine two people sitting across from each other. They laugh, they share stories, and everything seems perfect. Then the waiter places the bill on the table. Suddenly, the mood changes. Eyes move. Silence grows louder. Both people begin thinking instead of talking. This small moment often reveals more about personality than the previous 2 hours. One person worries about looking cheap. The other worries about appearing entitled. One wants to impress. The other wants equality. Yet beneath all these thoughts hides a deeper truth. Every decision sends a message, whether intended or not. Machiavelli understood that people rarely react to reality. They react to appearances. The appearance of strength creates influence. The appearance of desperation destroys it. This is why the smartest person in the room is not always the richest or the loudest. It is often the one who understands how actions are interpreted. Paying for dinner can look like confidence, but it can also look like insecurity if it is done only to buy approval. Splitting the bill can look like fairness, but it can also look like emotional distance if it is done to avoid investment. The same action can produce completely different results, depending on the intention behind it. Many men are taught that paying for the first date automatically makes them gentlemen. Others are told that splitting everything proves equality. Both ideas sound reasonable until they become rigid rules. Machiavelli disliked rigid rules because people are not machines. Human beings respond to situations, emotions, timing, and perception. A rule that works in one moment may fail completely in another. Wisdom is not about memorizing behavior. Wisdom is about reading people. Think about a king negotiating with another ruler. He does not enter every meeting with the same strategy. Sometimes he gives gifts. Sometimes he demands tribute. Sometimes he stays silent. Sometimes he speaks first. His decisions depend on the situation, not on tradition. Dating follows the same principle. The person who blindly follows social expectations often becomes predictable. Predictable people are easy to manipulate because others already know what they will do. Now consider the man who pays because he fears rejection. He tells himself he is being kind, but deep inside, he hopes the payment will increase attraction. He expects appreciation in return. He secretly believes he has purchased goodwill. When gratitude does not arrive, resentment quietly grows. This is not generosity. This is a transaction disguised as kindness. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately, because power is often lost when people confuse gifts with investments. Real generosity asks for nothing back. Manipulation always expects a reward. The difference cannot always be seen from the outside, but it changes everything inside. A confident man pays because he chooses to. An insecure man pays because he feels forced to. Outwardly, both actions look identical. Inwardly, they are worlds apart. The same principle applies to the woman on the date. If she automatically assumes the man must always pay without question, she is also communicating something. Perhaps she values tradition. Perhaps she is testing confidence. Perhaps she simply believes this is normal. Or perhaps she feels entitled. Without understanding her reasons, judging her behavior too quickly becomes another mistake. Machiavelli warned against acting before understanding motives, because appearances often hide deeper intentions. The greatest weakness in modern dating is that people react emotionally before they observe carefully. They see one action and immediately create a complete story. He paid, therefore he is confident. He did not pay, therefore he is selfish. She offered to split, therefore she is independent. She stayed silent, therefore she is entitled. Reality is rarely so simple. Intelligent people resist quick conclusions because they know that first impressions are only fragments of a much larger picture. Power belongs to the patient observer. While everyone else rushes to judge, the observer gathers information. He notices body language. He notices tone. He notices comfort with silence. He notices whether generosity appears natural or forced. These details reveal character far more accurately than the final payment itself. There is another reason why the first date payment creates so much confusion. Society teaches people conflicting lessons. One voice says, a real man always pays. Another voice says, everything should be equal. A third voice says, take turns. A fourth voice says, whoever invited should pay. Each opinion sounds convincing because each contains a piece of truth. The problem begins when people mistake partial truth for universal truth. Machiavelli believed that successful leaders avoided becoming prisoners of public opinion. They listened to advice without becoming controlled by it. Dating requires the same independence. If your actions are driven entirely by fear of judgment, then strangers are controlling your behavior without ever meeting you. Confidence is not measured by the bill. Confidence is measured by how comfortable you remain regardless of the bill. Watch people closely when the payment arrives. Some suddenly become nervous. Some start making jokes. Some reach for their wallets too quickly. Some wait for the other person to move first. These tiny reactions expose emotional security more clearly than expensive clothes or impressive careers ever could. Many people believe attraction grows through financial displays. Luxury restaurants, expensive gifts, and extravagant gestures are often treated like shortcuts to romance. Yet history repeatedly proves otherwise. Wealth may create attention, but attention is not respect. Attention may create excitement, but excitement is not loyalty. If money alone created, the richest people would never experience heartbreak. The truth is simpler and far more uncomfortable. People respect those who respect themselves first. Self-respect creates boundaries. Boundaries create mystery. Mystery creates curiosity. Curiosity creates attraction. When someone acts only to gain approval, their self-respect quietly disappears beneath the desire to please. This does not mean becoming cold or selfish. Machiavelli never praised unnecessary cruelty. He praised intelligent control. There is a difference. A wise person knows when kindness increases respect, and when excessive kindness reduces it. Too much giving too early often teaches others that your attention has little value, because it is available without effort. Imagine offering a priceless jewel to every stranger you meet. Soon nobody treats it as precious because it has become ordinary. Human attention works the same way. What is easily given is often easily ignored. What is offered with intention gains value. This is why the first date is not about proving your worth. It is about discovering whether the other person recognizes worth without needing constant demonstrations. A healthy connection develops through mutual curiosity, mutual effort, and mutual respect. It does not grow because one person keeps trying harder, while the other simply accepts the benefits. Many relationships quietly become unbalanced from the very first meeting, because one person believes they must earn affection while the other simply evaluates. The one seeking approval begins making endless sacrifices. The one receiving those sacrifices becomes accustomed to them. Neither notices the imbalance until disappointment appears months later. Machiavelli would say that the first move often shapes every move that follows. Not because destiny is fixed, but because habits are difficult to reverse. Expectations created early become traditions later. If you establish a relationship based on fear of losing someone, you may spend years trying to maintain that fragile position. If you establish it on calm confidence and mutual respect, the foundation becomes much stronger. The bill on the table is therefore only a symbol. It represents choices far greater than money. It asks whether your decisions come from confidence or anxiety. It asks whether you value appearances more than authenticity. It asks whether you are trying to impress or trying to understand. The answer to those questions will influence your future far more than the number printed on the receipt ever could. The greatest mistake people make on a first date is believing they are being judged only by the other person. In reality, they are also judging themselves. Every action either strengthens or weakens the story they tell themselves about who they are. A man who pays because he genuinely enjoys giving leaves the restaurant feeling peaceful, whether the relationship continues or not. A man who pays because he hopes to earn affection walks away calculating whether he received enough appreciation for his effort. The money leaves his wallet, but the expectation stays in his mind. That expectation becomes the beginning of disappointment. Machiavelli understood that people become vulnerable when they attach their happiness to outcomes they cannot control. You cannot control whether someone likes you. You cannot control whether they call you again. You cannot control how they interpret your actions. The only thing you truly command is your own behavior. The person who remembers this cannot be manipulated easily because they never trade their peace for another person's approval. Many first dates fail long before the bill arrives because both people are acting instead of revealing themselves. One pretends to be wealthier than they are. Another pretends to be more relaxed than they feel. One hides insecurity behind endless jokes. Another hides fear behind silence. Everyone performs a role, hoping it will be enough. Yet performances are exhausting. Sooner or later, the mask slips. A relationship built on performance always becomes fragile because it depends on maintaining an illusion. Machiavelli never advised people to become fake. He advised them to understand perception. These are very different ideas. Understanding perception means recognizing that every action communicates something. It does not mean creating a false identity. Confidence built on truth lasts. Confidence built on deception eventually collapses under its own weight. Suppose a woman sincerely offers to split the bill. Many men refuse immediately because they fear appearing weak. Others accept immediately because they fear appearing controlling. Neither reaction is automatically wise. Wisdom begins by observing the intention behind her offer. Is she trying to contribute because she values fairness? Is she testing your reaction? Is she trying to avoid feeling indebted? Each possibility requires understanding, not automatic behavior. The same is true from her perspective. A man who offers to pay may simply be expressing generosity. He may also be trying to impress. He may be following family values. He may be acting from habit. Judging his entire character from one gesture is like judging a book after reading only its title. Intelligent people collect patterns, not isolated moments. This is why patience is one of the rarest forms of power. Most people rush to conclusions because certainty feels comfortable. They want immediate answers. They want simple labels. Good or bad. Confident or insecure. Generous or selfish. But life rarely rewards those who think in extremes. The strongest minds tolerate uncertainty long enough to discover the truth. Consider how often attraction disappears after only a few dates. Many blame chemistry. Others blame timing. Yet sometimes the real cause is much simpler. One person gave too much before trust had been earned. They shared every feeling, every plan, every dream, believing openness alone would create intimacy. Instead, they removed all mystery before curiosity had time to grow. Machiavelli recognized that value often increases through measured restraint. This does not mean playing childish games or pretending not to care. It means understanding that relationships unfold naturally when both people invest gradually. If one person builds the entire bridge while the other merely watches, the balance disappears before the relationship has even begun. There is another hidden lesson inside the question of who pays. It reveals how each person thinks about responsibility. Some believe responsibility always belongs to others. Others believe they must carry everything alone. Neither extreme creates healthy partnerships. Strong relationships grow when responsibility is shared willingly, rather than demanded or avoided. Imagine two business partners. If one always contributes while the other only receives, resentment eventually replaces enthusiasm. The same principle exists in romance. Contribution is not measured only in money. Time is a contribution. Attention is a contribution. Honesty is a contribution. Effort is a contribution. Respect is a contribution. When these things flow naturally in both directions, trust becomes possible. Many people focus so intensely on the first bill that they ignore far more important questions. Does this person listen carefully? Do they show kindness to strangers? Do they speak respectfully about people who are not present? Do they take responsibility for their mistakes? These qualities predict the future of a relationship far better than who reached for the wallet first. Machiavelli believed that character is revealed through repeated actions. Anyone can behave impressively for one evening. Anyone can appear charming for a few hours. Consistency is much harder to fake. That is why wise people never become emotionally attached too quickly. They allow time to expose patterns that excitement tries to hide. Excitement often convinces people they have found someone extraordinary after only one meeting. They ignore small warning signs because they fear losing the fantasy. They explain away disrespect. They excuse selfishness. They overlook inconsistency. They become loyal to potential instead of reality. This is one of the oldest traps in human relationships. Hope is beautiful when it inspires action. Hope becomes dangerous when it replaces observation. Machiavelli would advise you to trust evidence more than promises. Words can be rehearsed. Emotions can be exaggerated. Intentions can change overnight. Habits, however, reveal the truth repeatedly. There is also a silent competition that many people never notice. They compete to appear less interested than they actually are. They delay replies to messages. They pretend to be busier than they are. They hide excitement because they believe honesty reduces attraction. This creates unnecessary confusion. Real confidence does not fear showing interest. It simply refuses to abandon self-respect in the process. A confident person can express appreciation without becoming dependent. They can enjoy another person's company without making that person the center of their identity. This balance is rare because many people confuse affection with attachment. Affection says, "I enjoy your presence." Attachment whispers, "I need your approval to feel complete." One creates freedom. The other creates pressure. Pressure quietly destroys attraction. When someone feels responsible for your emotional stability, after only 1 or 2 dates, they often begin to pull away. Not because they dislike you, but because the relationship already feels heavier than it should. Healthy attraction grows best in an atmosphere of ease, not obligation. This is why Machiavelli would remind you to guard your independence. Independence does not mean isolation. It means remembering that your purpose existed before this person entered your life, and will continue whether they stay or leave. A person with purpose cannot be controlled easily, because they never make another individual their entire world. Notice how truly confident people rarely talk about proving themselves. They ask thoughtful questions. They observe carefully. They laugh naturally. They do not treat every conversation like an interview they must pass. Their calmness comes from knowing that they are evaluating the other person as much as they are being evaluated themselves. This mindset changes everything. Instead of wondering, "How can I make them like me?" you begin asking, "Do our values actually fit together?" Instead of fearing rejection, you become curious about compatibility. Rejection then loses much of its power, because it no longer defines your worth. It simply reveals that two paths may not belong together. The bill at the end of the evening cannot answer these deeper questions. It cannot tell you whether someone will remain loyal during difficult times. It cannot reveal whether they keep their promises. It cannot measure emotional maturity or resilience. Yet people often give this single moment more importance than every meaningful conversation that came before it. The wisest people understand that the first date is not an examination where one person passes and the other fails. It is an opportunity to gather information without surrendering your identity. It is a conversation, not a performance. It is a beginning, not a verdict. Machiavelli would remind you that power is rarely loud. It appears in quiet certainty. It appears in the ability to remain composed when expectations collide. It appears in the discipline to choose your actions according to your principles rather than your fears. Whether you pay, split the bill, or accept another arrangement matters far less than the reason behind your choice. When your actions come from calm confidence, instead of hidden insecurity, you stop treating every date as a battle to be won. You begin seeing it for what it truly is, a chance to discover whether two people can build mutual respect without either one sacrificing their dignity. And that single shift in thinking changes far more than who pays for dinner ever could. By now, you may have realized that the question was never truly about paying for a meal. It was about understanding human nature. Money simply becomes the stage where confidence, fear, generosity, pride, insecurity, and respect quietly reveal themselves. Machiavelli would never tell you that one rule fits every situation, because he understood something that many people forget. Human beings are unpredictable. They are driven by emotions. They often do not understand themselves. The person who learns to read those emotions gains an advantage that no amount of wealth can buy. Think of every successful ruler throughout history. Their greatest strength was not force alone. It was their ability to understand motivation. They knew that every action had a hidden reason behind it. Every alliance carried an unseen expectation. Every favor created a future obligation. Dating works in exactly the same way. Every decision communicates a belief about yourself and about the person sitting across from you. When someone constantly asks, "What should I do to make them like me?" they have already surrendered the strongest position they possess. They have placed another person's opinion above their own judgment. This is the beginning of dependence. Dependence rarely creates admiration. It creates imbalance. The more desperately one person seeks validation, the more power they quietly hand to the other. This does not mean relationships should become power struggles. That is another misunderstanding. Machiavelli did not admire conflict for its own sake. He admired control. The greatest control is often the control you have over yourself. A person who can remain calm when rejected cannot be easily manipulated. A person who does not panic when someone walks away cannot be threatened by silence. A person who values themselves does not need to purchase affection with endless sacrifices. Many people spend years trying to become more attractive by changing their appearance, earning more money, or learning clever conversation techniques. While these things may improve first impressions, they cannot replace emotional stability. Emotional stability is what allows someone to remain genuine under pressure. It is what prevents them from becoming desperate when things do not go according to plan. Imagine two men leaving the same first date. Both paid for dinner. One returns home smiling because he enjoyed meeting someone new. Whether she calls again is simply information, not a judgment of his value. The second man spends the entire night checking his phone. He wonders if paying was enough. He questions every sentence he spoke. He replays every moment searching for mistakes. Externally, both men behaved the same. Internally, they lived completely different experiences. The first man controls his emotions. The second is controlled by them. Machiavelli would immediately recognize which man possesses greater strength. There is another lesson hidden beneath the surface. People often believe confidence means never caring what others think. That is not confidence. That is indifference. Real confidence listens without becoming controlled. It accepts feedback without becoming dependent upon approval. It remains open while protecting self-respect. On a first date, this balance becomes extremely important. If you refuse every suggestion simply to appear dominant, you reveal insecurity disguised as strength. If you agree with everything simply to avoid conflict, you reveal weakness disguised as kindness. Wisdom lies between these extremes. It speaks honestly while remaining respectful. It stands firm without becoming arrogant. This balance is attractive because it signals emotional maturity. Mature people do not need to win every conversation. They do not treat disagreements as personal attacks. They understand that compatibility is more valuable than constant agreement. When two people can express different opinions without fear, trust begins to grow naturally. Unfortunately, many relationships fail because both individuals become actors rather than partners. One constantly tries to impress. The other constantly tests. One keeps giving more. The other keeps asking for more. Over time, both become exhausted because neither relationship is built upon authenticity. It is built upon performance. Machiavelli would remind you that deception always carries a cost. If you pretend to be someone you are not, eventually you must continue pretending to keep the relationship alive. That burden becomes heavier with every passing month. Truth may require courage at the beginning, but lies require endless maintenance. This is why honesty, combined with intelligence, becomes such a powerful strategy. Honest people are predictable to themselves, even when they remain mysterious to others. They know why they make their decisions. They understand their values. They are not easily pushed into actions they later regret simply because they fear temporary rejection. Fear has ruined more relationships than rejection ever has. Fear makes people speak too soon. Fear makes people stay silent when honesty is needed. Fear encourages jealousy, overthinking, and unnecessary sacrifice. Fear whispers that if you do not do enough, you will lose everything. Yet this voice ignores one important truth. Anything that depends entirely upon constant fear cannot become lasting happiness. Notice how often people confuse effort with value. They believe that if they spend more, text more, plan more, or sacrifice more, they automatically deserve greater affection. Human emotions do not work that way. Respect cannot be forced. Loyalty cannot be purchased. Attraction cannot be negotiated like a business contract. The strongest relationships are rarely built through grand gestures. They are built through countless small moments of consistency, showing respect when it is difficult, keeping promises when nobody is watching, speaking honestly even when the truth feels uncomfortable, listening without immediately trying to control the conversation. These habits create trust far more effectively than expensive dinners ever could. When Machiavelli studied leadership, he understood that people follow those who appear reliable. Reliability creates security. Security creates confidence. Confidence creates influence. Exactly the same pattern appears inside healthy relationships. Someone who consistently behaves according to their values becomes easy to trust because their actions match their words. The bill on the first date cannot measure any of these qualities. It cannot reveal integrity. It cannot reveal patience. It cannot reveal resilience after disappointment. Yet many people allow that single moment to dominate their memory, while ignoring everything else that happened during the evening. The wiser approach is surprisingly simple. If you invited someone and genuinely wish to treat them, offer sincerely without expecting anything in return. If they wish to contribute, respect the conversation rather than turning it into a battle of pride. If you both decide to split the bill, do so confidently instead of apologizing for it. Whatever choice is made, let it come from self-respect rather than fear. People remember emotional experiences more than financial transactions. They remember whether they felt relaxed. They remember whether they felt heard. They remember whether they felt respected. Years later, very few people remember the exact amount spent on dinner. They remember how the other person made them feel about themselves. That is the true lesson. The first date is not an audition where you must prove your worth. It is a meeting between two lives that may or may not continue together. Success is not measured by receiving another date. Success is measured by leaving the evening without betraying your principles. Machiavelli believed that those who understood themselves could never be completely defeated by the opinions of others. This wisdom remains timeless because human nature has changed far less than technology. People still seek respect. They still fear rejection. They still confuse appearances with reality. They still mistake approval for genuine connection. The person who rises above these illusions gains something far greater than dating success. They gain freedom. Freedom from chasing validation. Freedom from overthinking every interaction. Freedom from believing that their value depends upon another person's decision. When you carry this mindset into every relationship, something remarkable happens. You stop trying to convince people to choose you. Instead, you calmly allow your character to speak for itself. Some people will appreciate it. Others will not. Neither outcome changes your identity. And perhaps this is the most Machiavellian lesson of all. True influence does not come from forcing people to admire you. It comes from becoming someone who never abandons wisdom, dignity, and self-control simply to gain temporary approval. The one who masters these qualities no longer fears the bill at the end of the first date, because they understand that the most valuable thing they bring to the table was never the money in their wallet. It was the strength of their character, the clarity of their mind, and the quiet confidence that no one can buy, borrow, or take away. If this message gave you a new way to think, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe for more timeless wisdom, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling us one lesson that changed your perspective. Until next time, stay calm, think strategically, and let your actions speak louder than your words.